Hello and welcome everyone back to the NPC Dungeon. I made another change this week. I figured I'd announce that early on before I actually start this week's story. You may have noticed that I relabeled my episodes. The stories now have the word story in the title, and the GM Advice episodes now have the phrase DM Advice in the title. This is so that you can more easily tell what you're getting, and so that if you prefer one over the other, you can more easily find that one. I'm trying to do what I can to make this podcast as user-friendly as possible. And to reiterate, last week I said that I was going to start uploading 2 episodes a week instead of just one. That way you get a story and a GM Advice episode every week instead of just one or the other. And in the spirit of this, I'd like to announce that the other episode that I recorded this week is all about improving your confidence as a DM or a GM, and I'm really proud of that one, so if you haven't, give that a listen. But this one is a story, but it's not just any story. It's a continuation of the story that I began last week. If you didn't listen to that one, I recommend you go ahead and do so, as this story does build directly off of it, but I will go ahead and give a brief recap here anyway, in case you don't remember it. Last week's story followed 2 of my players, a blue ooze named 57 and a changeling warlock named V. These 2 had a lot of fun moments together, but one of my favorites was definitely when they tried to take care of a fish they were given early on as a gift while traveling along a long river. This was where last week's story began, but all the shenanigans ended when they were attacked by bullywugs, which are giant anthropomorphic frogs. Trust me, they're a lot cuter than they sound. One of these bullywugs survived, and my players decided they wanted to keep it. This week, we'll see how well that went for them. I want to mention that this story is going to be shorter than usual. I know I say that, it doesn't end up being shorter sometimes, but this one actually is going to be shorter. So, without further ado, what happened? Well, after easily sidestepping the final bullywug's attack, 57 looked over at V and said, "We're keeping him." V thought for a moment and then nodded. "Sure, the way I see it, we're saving him." But this final bullywug wasn't convinced. He didn't see it that way. He just watched all of his fellow bullywugs die at the hands of these 2 and didn't know what to do. He sat in the corner of the boat shivering and looked away from the 2. "I know what'll make him more comfortable," said V as he changed his form into that of a similarly sized bullywug. The bullywug looked up and recoiled. "You're scaring him," said 57. "Stop, I'll do it." And he shaped his ooze body into a similar form as the bullywug in front of him. This time, the bullywug didn't just recoil, it turned and jumped out of the boat, splashing into the water and paddling away as the grotesque imitation lumbered over him. 57 turned to V. "I don't see the problem, why do you run away?" V yelped in what he could only describe as terror at the monstrosity in front of him. "Okay, fine, I understand," said 57, pointing his finger at the fleeing bullywug. It froze in space, its muscles tensing as it sank under the waves. "Again," V said, turning to 57, "how do you do all this?" 57 shrugged. V shook his head and dove into the water, treading through the river before reaching the bullywug and lugging him back into the boat. "We can't have that. Let's tie him to the mast," 57 suggested. V protested. "I don't know if that's really necessary, but it didn't take a lot of convincing." "And just how long do you think he'll be able to survive out here alone?" 57 asked. "Fair," said V before tying the bullywug to the mast by his wrist so that he still had a little bit of room to move. "I gotta be humane, you know," he said. 57 formed a couple of fingers out of his hand and snapped those fingers, dispelling his magic and allowing the bullywug to move once again. He leaned in. "What's your name?" he asked. But what he got in return was a series of strange croaks and snaps rising up from the bullywug's throat. V's boisterous laugh rose up from the other side of the boat, from where he was resting and trying to dry himself off for the second time that day. "Thanks, 57. I really needed that, but let me ask you, what exactly did you expect?" "I don't know. You think you can do any better?" "I can try." V squinted his eyes and mentally reached out with an ancient arcane energy into the mind of the bullywug. "Hey," he thought, "don't be afraid. Yeah, I do this. So what's your name? Can you say it in common?" The bullywug now, probably unsurprisingly and once again, recoiled, but no longer tried to run away. "Bonk," he said. "Bonk?" V asked, not even trying to hide his confusion. "His name is Bonk," 57 shouted. "Now quick, do it again. Ask him something else." V tried, but Bonk, apparently, was silent now. He didn't say a word, not even in his own language. "I have an idea," said 57, producing the fish and handing it to Bonk. And strangely enough, it worked. Bonk looked down intently at the little fish in the bottle, fascinated by its movements inside. "Well," he began, "while he's busy with that, we can pull off to the side and look for loot on the shore." "You go ahead," said 57. "I'll stay back and keep watch." The 2 talked as V pulled the boat over and tied it to the side. Bonk, still apparently not wanting anything to do with them, walked over to the side of the mast and sat away from them, just out of their line of sight. V trudged out into the forest, finding some spears and picking out a scroll that one of the bullywugs had for some reason, and made his way back to the boat. 57 stared out into the forest, eyes peeled for danger, but he was looking in the wrong direction. A loud splash sounded from behind him, followed by a much quieter splash. He turned around to see the boat erupt in flames as Bonk and the other fish swam away down the river. V walked up from behind and they both watched this spectacle until V put his hand on 57's shoulder. "Well, I guess we walk now." And that's it for this week's story. I know I said it's going to end up being kind of short, and it did, but I kind of thought this part deserved its own episode. But don't worry, you definitely haven't seen the last of Bonk. Come back next Friday for the next leg of this Bonk adventure to see how my players reacted and how their adventure went after this first run-in with their bullywug friend. And for a DM/GM advice episode all about how to immerse your players further into the game. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, feel free to give some of my other episodes a listen. You can listen to this show pretty much wherever you get your podcasts or at the NPC Dungeon YouTube channel. And as always, till next time, let's learn something.